and water system development fees to immediately follow the executive session.
Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to amend. Does everyone understand the motion?
No, it was,
Cannot hear? Would you repeat your motion, please, sir?
Sure. Move that we adjust the agenda so that item number 28, the executive session, instead of being near the conclusion, will be after number 14, and that immediately following the executive session, we'll have number 21.
All right, we have a second. In discussion?
Yeah, I would hope you'd make that executive session as brief as possible. I know that's a high ask, but I think we can do it.
Motion second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimously approved to amend the agenda. Number 5, consideration of the minutes, and for the sake of time tonight, I would ask to hear a motion to approve A, B, and C.
motion to approve A, B, and C.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimously approved. Number 6, public comments. We have 2 people that have signed up to speak tonight. Elaine, where's Elaine? There's Elaine. Come forth, give us your name and where you reside, and she's going to speak to the sewer and water fees.
Good evening, Elaine Jordan. Live at 124 Sand Dollar Street, Holden Beach. I work at 131 Ocean Boulevard, West Holden Beach. Just very quick comments on 2 items. Number 1, first on the SDF, or formerly item number 21, now perhaps item 15 or so. I appreciate all the work the commission did back in August to do a reset, to rethink this. I understand that on the agenda tonight is perhaps to try to figure out what would be the process to finalize that. I'm just going to again ask, we've got a lot of people here who are very interested in this topic and in what the final result is. I would ask that you include people in the real estate community in the process in a very formal way, advisory capacity, bring them in, get their input, not in necessarily just in public hearings, but in small sessions, whatever. I know you've done that on other topics. I think this topic is equally, if not more important, for the entire community. Secondly, I just had a brief opportunity to review the second water tower report, scanned through it. Frankly, it raised as many questions in my mind as it answers, and I hope that just like the engineering report for the SDF, that this report gets questioned to the void, if you will, as to whether there is a need for a second water tower, when is that need, the type of water tower, location, etc. Again, a very important and frankly a very expensive item. We appreciate your time and attention to these. Thank you.
Mr. Royal?
Ashley Royal, 144 Sailfish Street. I'm here to comment on agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action on the corner spool LFP presentation concerning consulting services. I had the opportunity to attend the special meeting today at 4 o'clock, where Corner Spool presented their expertise in consulting specifically for coastal communities and the experience they have and contacts they have with county, state, and national legislators. And I've shared then, and I'll share now, that 3.5 years ago, when they first made their presentation, I was on the Board of Commissioners then, and I was part of the board that decided to take no action at that time. Since then, I've reflected on that lack of a decision, which was a decision not to employ them. And I've reflected on the fact that we have seen the impact of not soliciting experts in this area who can provide a service that will greatly assist us in issues that are vitally important to the town of Golden Beach. They expressed to us their experience in not only making contacts at a timely intervention with legislators to where they can affect decision making, but also they shared experience with their success rate in achieving grants for some clients that they had with 100% success rate on multiple grant applications. So I would encourage the board, as I did this afternoon, to seriously consider and approve the consulting services that they can provide us, because I'm convinced that it would aid us in a lot of important decisions that we have to make, and it would make our voice known in a manner of which it has not occurred yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to number 7, discussion and possible action on Coroner Spruill, the presentation that we had this afternoon. That meeting was a special meeting which I called for, and quite frankly found it to be very, very worthwhile in listening to the multiple options of services that we can have provided to us by this group. And without saying too much, too long here, the commissioners, if you would address the topic.
I found their depth and breadth to be very impressive, and frankly what we need. They're federal, state, county, local. They have their network. They have, to me, listening to them, they know what they're doing. They're going to be efficient. I think that the question that is going to have to be addressed is the breadth of the work that we have for the amount of annual budget that we have, but that is secondary to saying I think that it is a firm that we can benefit from hiring.
I was very impressed with the breadth. I think what we need to focus on, I think Joe talked about it, was, we're not looking for the breadth really. We're looking for beach renourishment, beach activities, well qualified. They talked about it very well. They had a list that we now have. I'm a little disappointed that we weren't given this list earlier, that we could talk to during the meeting, but that's all right. Mr. McIntyre explained that he understands that that the firm works for the Board of Commissioners, and that's good that he expressed that. And I view this group as very strategic. I'd like to understand tactically how they would work, how much detail, and I'm looking forward to our next speaker and see if these two could possibly work together, to be honest with you. But I'd like to pursue understanding how we can go forward with this consulting service.
This afternoon, I also, for those that may not have been here, I expressed some of my concerns. The group obviously got up and spoke to us. They're well qualified. They have outstanding experience. My issue that I have that I explained is, and I always like to put it in, that we're in the sand business. Without sand and the possibility of losing sand, and the possibility that is no longer a possibility, the reality has set in, that there's someone out there that has made a decision for the Corps of Engineers. They were advised that we would lose the sand through a dredging process out of the Lockwood Folly Inlet. And I attended that meeting, as well as other commissioners attended that meeting, and the town manager was there as well. And when you go into a meeting and have to find this kind of stuff out without communication, I mean, the whole world is, you know, if you don't have communication and you're not told, you're not even asked about the issue. The issue was that we didn't have easements, that the adjacent island to us, Oak Island, they had less of an easement issue. We had greater issues. But did anybody ever call us and tell us? Did anybody ever pick up the phone and talk to us? Did anybody ever send a letter to us? No. And so I don't know about you, but you know, I kind of felt when I walked out of the room that I was slapped alongside the head, and I didn't have any alternative but to walk out, you know, of the room. And so, you know, I'm sure a group like this, I don't know whether it's a combination of that group and Clark Wright. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to listen to what everybody has to say, and we will make a decision. I do appreciate Ashley, I do appreciate your comments, and that, but obviously we can't act like we did a while ago. We have to take some appropriate action that's going to defend our beaches, that's going to defend us, and it's not going to be placed on the backs of our residents. Thank you.
I was sitting in the audience 3.5 years ago when the presentation was made. Obviously, I didn't confer with the commissioners, but at the time, I guess I was naive, and it may have been the same position that the commissioners were thinking, but we elect officials, and we expect the elected officials to represent us. And they know, or they should know, what we expect them to do, what side of an issue we fall upon, what their constituents need. And so I had no hesitation or regret that nobody was hired. But after listening to the presentations made today, I've completely changed my mind. I was naive, I continue to be naive. I expect things to be done the way you hear it in the civics class when you're in the 7th grade. That's not the way the world works. So in order for us to really have some representation, we need somebody who has the ear of the people that are going to be the decision makers. And if it's this firm, that's fine. If it's another firm, that's fine too. But we need somebody to speak on our behalf. So at the end of the day, I'm in favor of retaining a firm to do that. Thank you.
I don't think there was any question after today's meeting that the firm that came and made the presentation, and we had in fact heard of from them 3 years ago, is a powerhouse. It's a major firm, major reach, major contacts, major experience. They're really, really good. They can do that job. It is our first time to hear from anybody about this issue. We haven't talked to any other groups about it. Haven't looked at any other firms that do it. My firm and I asked, my question was, well, what's this going to cost us? This is a powerhouse firm. And for major stuff, I'm happy to pay for that. I would not be unhappy to see us have them do some major things for us and somebody less of a powerhouse do local, state and county and local reach kind of things for us. It is a major issue. I've mentioned before, I think the sand is our lifeblood. If we don't have that sand on that beach, nobody wants to come to a beach that doesn't have sand on it. And so they won't want our properties, our property values fall, we won't get the rental income, we'll have to raise taxes on the people who are still here. We need the beach, and we need it from one end to the other. We don't just need the central reach, we need the east end, we need the west end, we need the whole shot. That's a major problem. If we can get help from anybody, state, federal, local, bureaus, agencies, whatever it is, to work with us rather than work against us, I'm in favor of supporting that. So I want to hear the next speaker and to see if that is a possibility as well. And even for the board to think about, do we need to think about anybody else, or are we okay about it? Got to appreciate, we still don't know what it would cost, so the final decision will be after we hear what would this cost us? Because you have to kind of judge things. Okay, we've got things. Are these the ones that can do it at this price? If we're fine with it, we do that. And I'd say it is our responsibility to act in your behalf. We try to understand it. When I was here 3 years ago, we didn't understand it. All we knew that Congressman McIntyre had just retired. He was going into the business. He hadn't actually gotten into the business yet. He would be available, and the board was kind of numb. I think I didn't know the issue yet. I didn't know the seriousness of the sand issue. I do now. I know better now. I don't know it all, but I sure know a lot better now than I did 3 years ago. So I'm willing to listen to the rest of the board and see if we progress forward.
If it meets the approval of the board, could I ask the gentleman to come forward and let the audience see who we're talking about?
Sure.
Congressman, you and your cohorts come up here and let us evaluate. Just take a minute and give names and basically what he tried to do. We've got a long agenda, so I'm not going to get on for very long, but take a minute or two. Just do a quick summary.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Holden. Thanks to the council for your time this afternoon. We spent over an hour, almost an hour in a presentation to go through many details, and then ended up being here almost an hour and a half and taking time to answer the council's questions. I'm Mike McIntyre. I know several of you in this room and have enjoyed working with you through the years. The work that I'm doing now that we talked to the council about was in the federal arena in terms of working with federal agencies. We talked a lot about coastal issues and beach renourishment type issues. We also covered other federal ways of helping with grants, low interest loans, and no interest loans to try to help with other issues that may affect economic development in the area, and ways in which the town can avail itself to federal grants, loans, and opportunities to help improve the opportunities for the citizens of this community. We would be excited to do that. I have with me two other colleagues, Lynn Dunn, who has been the former Chief Counsel of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, formerly known as Deaner, Department of Economic and Natural Resources. So he has a wealth of knowledge at the state level, and as we said today, is a walking encyclopedia of all the state regulations with regard to permitting and issues involving wetlands and coastal areas and environmental law. And then Roger Gwynn, who is with the Ferguson Group, is the CEO, Vice President. Ferguson Group is our group that is our eyes and ears on the ground in Washington on a daily basis, which also can do legislative monitoring and research as bills move through subcommittees, committees, the full House, the full Senate, and as we try to track issues with federal agencies and departments, such as the Army Corps of Engineers, and such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, such as the EPA, such as, and the list goes on and on when we go through the various federal departments and agencies that are involved. If any of you want to say hello, Mr. Mayor, that's the gist.
All right, thank you very much. If you've got a spoonful, we'll swallow a spoonful.
Well, I think I do regulatory work mostly in conjunction with Mike's efforts, Roger's efforts. I can help both with the state component of grants and so forth, moving things through the Raleigh office of things through. And occasionally regulatory issues come up also, and I can help with those things. That's what I do most of the time in my practice.
Lynn was the mediator of the Bonner Bridge settlement, we told her today, chosen by federal and state agencies and all the environmental groups. They chose this man to mediate that long, contentious battle about the bridge to the Outer Banks and how that should be done. He also helped with Bird Island back when that was set aside as a natural sanctuary. So this man has a history as well as the knowledge of working on these types of issues from the state level.
Again, I'm Roger Gwynn, the CEO of the Ferguson Group. Ferguson Group is a Washington representation firm that represents public agencies. We represent about 93 cities and counties across the country, 23 states. We are, as Mike said, the eyes and ears of Pointer Spruill's team on the ground on a daily basis in Washington. And we've got a great team led by former Congressman McIntyre, who's been worked hand in glove with the delegation, with Mr. Rouser, the congressman, and the two senators, and others throughout the delegation, or the Congress, the House and Senate. So this has great reach on your behalf. And what we do is, again, sort of help support support Congressman McIntyre in this advocacy effort. We also focus on grants. Again, that was mentioned earlier. So grants are both the identification and the grant writing, and sort of grants soup to nuts all the way, any from start to finish, are our specialty as well. We've been focused on that before the earmark ban went in place, where grants became the dominant activity. But so we got a 36-year track record of helping communities secure competitive resources at the federal level. And we love the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council.
Whenever the first presentation was made, I asked very strongly that the town Holden Beach give consideration for hiring Mike and the firm. I'm begging this time, please give it full consideration. And we need somebody that knows people, been there and done that. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But thanks again, guys. Thanks to you commissioners for giving time and consideration. And I would simply say to you commissioners, it sounds like we've got a consensus to look at the possibility in a strong way of pursuing this. So what would be the next step? Are we going to set up a meeting, and we're going to ask that our attorney and David meet with them and see if we can iron out some rough draft of ways to talk about it, or how do we move forward? Because every day that goes by, just like this past event Joe talked about, we didn't have anybody in there fighting for us, and there we go. So who knows what's next? But I sure would like to move forward if indeed that is the consensus of the board.
I personally think what we need is the sit down of, what are the priority objectives, what sort of a rough game plan, and a cost for the program, and then having that in front of us will allow us to make a decision. It's kind of like a contract, any other contract that we sign. It's what are you going to get and how much does it cost?
I'm okay with it.
We'll be in touch with you. All right.
Thank you. I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, we'd be happy to make a proposal if that's the wish of the council, to negotiate a potential proposal. And obviously we get the council's desire of what you want.
Would you like for them to bring forth a proposal, and that'll be a beginning for it to talk about?
Sure.
Okay. If you do that, that'd be greatly appreciated.
We would be glad to talk with the town manager on the technical side of that, and the list, and what it would look like.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, as long as the commissioners are involved in
Yeah,
finalizing
yeah.
that list.
Well, they have to come
Yeah, we
back.
kind of missed that point this afternoon.
It's got to go through you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will make for the public's benefit, if you don't remember what things were going on 10, 15 years ago, and the way we feel now about Congress being one and two, and not talking to each other, and absolutely not agreeing with each other on anything. Congressman McIntyre was known for the 20 years he was in Congress as being one of the best people at crossing the aisle and getting deals done across the board. He could get Republicans and Democrats to sit down, have lunch, talk about major issues, and get it solved. In today's environment, where you've still got the A and B and not talking to each other, somebody like that can make that happen. And I think if we're going to pick somebody, I didn't know this 3 years ago, but I know it now.
And he received an award for that.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, they're highly qualified. I think it would be I don't know what the cost, but we can look at the return on investment, and that's what we should do.
Okay, let's move along to number 8, if that's your pleasure. Discussion and possible action. Attorney Clark Wright, you have the floor, sir. If you will come to the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Trying to think of something catchy like sloppy seconds, but that's kind of bad. The first thing I want to say is that I am not here to compete. I'm not here say that I'm better in some particular way than Glenn Dunn or Representative McIntyre is, or on down the line. I will say that I spent 12 years at a large regional law firm and represented the governor of the state of North Carolina and represented the department on multiple issues involving coastal matters as well as military airspace, water quality, air quality, and the like. So I know my way around those same areas as well. I'm kind of the guy who now, even though I've heard that there was some feedback on my fees on the jetty matter, or the terminal groin matter, but I'm cheaper than Pointer and Spruill. But I think more importantly, I've known Glenn Dunn. I don't know Representative McIntyre except by reputation, and I would echo what John and Joe and others have said up there at the microphone. But I've known Glenn Dunn for a damn long time, and he's a damn good lawyer. And I think that I could work very well with that firm if there was a role for me. My primary reason for coming here tonight was at the request of Commissioner Freer to talk about the sort of next chapter in the terminal groin saga, which continues to move on in various other ways. More specifically, the Ocean Isle Beach litigation, which has been brought by the National Audubon Society, represented by the Southern Environmental Law Center, against the Corps, and they also had to name the town as a defendant since the town holds the permit. That litigation has been stalled, and sort of here's an ironic, I guess I'll drop one name, Representative McIntyre. I know you've got a whole lot more, but the judge in that case is my former law partner, Louise Flanagan. And Louise had been entertaining a motion by the SELC attorneys to amend and expand the administrative record to include, among other things, pretty importantly, the draft and final environmental impact statement documents dealing with the Holden Beach terminal groin. And SELC had also asked that the record be expanded to include the NEPA documents from the other pending projects, Figure 8 Island and Baldhead Island being primary among them. Louise just issued an order that basically denied the motions, rather interesting grounds, on the grounds that since the Corps didn't consider it, it wasn't part of the record. I don't know, but where I come from, I call that circular reasoning. I don't know how hard that issue is going to be fought going forward or not, but here's the bottom line. The bottom line is they finished their wrangling over what pieces of paper are going to be part of the official record, and now, under a very expedited time frame, the parties have to submit their briefs and present their arguments in formal form to the court, and the court's going to decide this case probably next spring or late spring or early summer. Louise doesn't mess around when it comes to the so-called federal rocket docket. I sent to Peter, and I don't know if he's had it distributed, copies of the recent court orders. The one order, which is 12 pages long, basically denying the vast majority of Southern Environmental Law Center's efforts to expand the administrative record. And then the second is a jointly done scheduling order under which the Southern Environmental Law Center's brief is due November the 20th. That's 4 weeks from now. And now to tie this back, so what does all this matter to this board and this town? You know, when we have the whole process involving this board's and this town's position on its own terminal groin, I made the observation at that time that, you know, one of the issues about terminal groins is it's kind of like if your neighbor puts a bulkhead in or a bunch of hard rock and you don't. then, you know, you lose shoreline, you get eroded, and pretty soon everybody's got to do it. I really do believe that the best data and science and information that's out there leaves at least that potential when it comes to terminal growing. You know, the basic science is depending on the way the sand transport goes, one side wins and the other side tends to lose. And as we know, the state statute required that you assess a certain impact area. Well, the impact area for the Ocean Isle Beach terminal growing includes the west end of Holden Beach. And at the time that that process was underway before the Corps of Engineers, this board, the prior instructions of this board to David, the town manager, were to pursue terminal growing. So the few meetings and interactions that Holden Beach had with Ocean Isle Beach were constructive in nature. But that was long before this board made its recent decision that it would like to pursue, if you will, softer shoreline protection and beach nourishment options over hardened structures such as terminal growing. And the point I made then, and I'm now making it with a very acute clock ticking time-wise, is does this town want to get involved in any formal or official way in that pending federal litigation? If it does, now be's the time. And I'd be happy to do it. So in one sense, I'm up here in a selfish or self-serving position saying I'd be happy to help y'all with that. On the other hand, I can do so, I think, more efficiently than anybody else in the state. And I'd be happy to try to do it and to offer you as reduced a rate and estimate on what that would cost as I can possibly put together, given the reality of the federal court litigation, which impose more strict requirements on how you go about your business. I personally think the town should give that serious consideration. If the town is seriously considering that, you got basically two options. One option would be to formally move to intervene as a party plaintiff, joining with the National Audubon Society and making the argument to the court that the environmental assessment process for that project is insufficient, in part because it failed to adequately assess the impact issues on the west end of this town, Holden Beach. That's a pretty tall order to do at this stage in the litigation, and given all these other parts are connected, the idea of trying to work together with the Corps, that's certainly something you got to keep in mind. I will say this, the Corps is a bureaucracy. They don't generally get offended by well-considered litigation on the one hand and then dealing with them on another issue on the other. But that's something I think the board would certainly want to take into account. The more streamlined and cost-effective way to participate would be to authorize me or someone else to file a friend of the court brief, an amicus brief, on behalf of the town's particular position. One of the advantages of the friend of the court brief is it's not necessarily saying we endorse everything those, bird lovers in Audubon Society are saying. But when this matter is before the court, we want the court to understand that we have concerns 1, 2, and 3, and we present them in the form of a friend of the court brief and a motion for the court to accept that in its discretion. Courts don't have to, but usually if it's somebody like a municipality with a separate perspective to bring to bear, those motions are granted. That would be the course that I would recommend if the town's going to do anything. That's the key first point there. I do think and having heard the presentations at 4 o'clock, I'd make a couple of observations. One, you can't do any better than Pointer and Spruill. Number 2, their focus is national, international, and big picture. And so I really think it's important that this board take David's first kind of wish list and narrow it down and really focus so that they can be part of a team where it's, this is where we want that expertise focused on and fly. Another point I would make is that their potential for expertise in the grant area and potential creativity there, that's a big plus. Another point I would make, and I mentioned this to them in the back of the room after the presentations at 4 o'clock, is when we were going through the terminal drawing process, hearings and discussions and debate, one of the people I recommended that the town seek input from was Rudy Rudolph, who's the head of the Carteret County Shoreline Protection Office. And Rudy is a very interesting person and a great asset to interact with and work with. And Rudy made a comment that I think is well worth thinking about, and that is that compared to us, or Holden Beach, he had it easy because his shoreline protection challenges involve one island with inlets at either end, but a contiguous island that had multiple municipalities or communities in that stretch. Down here, you've got a bunch of small islands chopped up by all these incredibly dynamic inlets, and thus the geography alone presents some additional challenges to cooperation. And I was talking to Peter about this. It's going to be really hard, but really important that Holden Beach find ways to coordinate and cooperate with other smaller communities and with the county and with the state and with the feds. And again, I think Pointer and Spruill presents some real opportunities there, but also some potential problems. One of the commissioners at 4 asked a really important question, and that's the conflicts issue. And that's something I think there needs to be some robust discussion about how to avoid that and how to maximize the potential for cooperation, because that's going to be critical to these smaller communities. And let's face it, we got a whole lot less population density in terms of registered voters in this area than does Wilmington, or Raleigh, or even Greenville, or even my hometown of Newbern, much less Charlotte. And something that I have tried to beat the drum on repeatedly, maybe with not a whole lot of success yet, but it is critical that you guys find ways to have those people who come to enjoy these great natural assets understand that it's in their interest to share and carry some of the load when it comes to shoreline protection, beach renourishment, and the like. The state of Florida was lucky. They recognized this long ago, and they obviously have a heck of a lot of shoreline. And they enacted statewide legislation that set up funding where everybody in the state contributes some amount to the process of renourishing all of their shorelines when needed on a regular schedule. It's really important, as I think Joe said it best, we're in the sand business whether we like it or not. I think what the statistics now are that over 90% of North Carolina's wonderful beaches, which are nationally recognized, are artificially renourished. It's not, quote, natural in the purest sense of that term anymore. And as Noel well knows, and me too, we can look at all these easements, when the state comes in or the feds and renourishes using public funds, guess who owns that? The state, if any land is raised from below mean high water mark. And that creates another host of issues, which the Corps claims was one of the reasons that the sand from this most recent permit project went to Oak Island. But I'd like to make a really important point there. That permit, what was the primary purpose of that permitted project? Dredging the inlet. Not somebody owning the sand. From the Corps' perspective, the sand was a waste byproduct, not the tail wagging the whole dog of how you're gonna dredge the inlet. So from the Corps' perspective, there were some funding deadlines pressing, and they're like, we gotta get this project permitted so we don't lose the ability to do it. And, you know, what the heck, Holden Beach has had it for a number of years, and I'm speculating a little bit. Let's give it to Oak Island, because and they've got fewer easements, it'll be less of a mess for us to have to deal with, and if something comes up, we'll have fewer people to condemn or have to threaten or whatever. I think there's some very good arguments to the contrary, and that'll be something, again, that whoever advocates on behalf of Holden Beach can get involved with. One way I would put that is that I think I tend to know the nuts and bolts regulatory officials pretty well at the Wilmington District Office. I know Glenn probably does as well, but if there's a way to mesh working together on regulatory issues, I'd be happy to try to do it. But I truly want to emphasize, especially to those other than Peter, because he's the only one I talked to and he invited me, that I am not here to compete. You know, God has blessed me in many ways, and one of those is that I was able to walk away from the big law firm 16 years ago and continue with an extremely high level practice, almost as a solo practitioner in a small firm in a wonderful town, Glenn's hometown, and it's great. And that leaves me able to not necessarily charge as much, to not have very many conflicts, to be available, and to pick and choose, and to say no. And I will say no in one heartbeat if I think that this board and this town can't figure out how to work together, how to share information, how to communicate and move forward collectively in a positive direction. There were some wounds that were inevitable in the terminal groin discussion. It's over for now, and it's really important that all of you guys share with each other, work together with each other, and express a common voice. Because if you're going to have strength when you're dealing with the Division of Coastal Management or the Corps of Engineers or anybody else, the legislature, it's going to come from a coherent, focused position that's been thought through and has support. When I've served on boards and people come asking for money and whatnot, one of the very first questions is, well, do 100% of your board members give? Are 100% of your board members involved? Have they invested in that? And you need to think similarly. It's going to be really important on this. And I would encourage you still, whether it's indirectly through Pointer and Spruill or me or anybody else, to get people like Rudy Rudolph down here. And the last thing I would say is, you know, everyone has rightly lauded Pointer and Spruill, but you may want to talk to some other people. You know, we're not the only games in town. Either me at the sort of tactical, you know, boots on the ground level, or Pointer and Spruill at covering the waterfront level. I don't have any dogs in that fight, but generally competition's a good thing. And so, again, maybe what y'all need to do is put together the focused list of what's most important to you after you have some of your own discussions, and present it to Pointer and Spruill and possibly to some others. But circling back around, I've talked long damn enough. I'm here primarily because there is a very time-sensitive decision point in the Ocean Isle Beach federal litigation challenging the decision by the Corps of Engineers to permit a terminal groin for that town. And under both the state statutes and NEPA, as well as the Clean Water Act provisions that apply, the west end of Holden Beach is part of the impact zone area. And I ask you just one simple question on that. Do you feel like you've been adequately represented and informed as to those issues? I think the answer to that is no. And that's no adverse reflection on anyone. When David Hewitt was involved in that, he was running under the orders from the prior resolution to support that project as well as Holden Beach's project. We're in a different posture now. So that's the issue that this board needs to consider and, if possible, act on fairly quickly. Cost. I can't predict with absolute accuracy, but I would give you an estimate that filing a friend of the court brief and a motion to go with it and getting it done by November 20th and coordinating with SELC would cost in the range of $9,000 to $19,000. That's that's as close as I can pin it down. I'll do my best to give you a discounted hourly rate, a notch lower than what I did for the terminal growing process. And I've talked too long, and if y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 9, Shane, our engineer. Brunswick Avenue, bumpity bump.
Yes, I asked Shane to preface some alternatives for Brunswick Avenue. I haven't prepared a memo that outlines those, but this is in anticipation of trying to get a running start at next year's budget workshop, and hopefully we can come to some decision, maybe not tonight, but at least establish a framework on how the board wants to address Brunswick Avenue.
Well, it's interesting you said that because I see the one sheet. Do you have other alternatives? To me, this is more of a quote versus a proposal.
Well, I think the alternatives David are talking about is maybe the approach of applying this particular method, not different alternatives, how to fix it. There's just alternatives of, do we look at, doing a test section from, this street to this street as blocking to, approach it, instead of, going all in and doing all of Brunswick Avenue, which is what you're looking at there, would be an asphalt approach to all of Brunswick Avenue for, the amount that we estimate.
When we say all of Brunswick Avenue, are we talking from here west?
Yes, sir, yeah. From
East to west.
Rothschild, just Rothschild to, what's the end? High Point? High Point
Okay,
Street,
so that's
which is the
Brunswick Avenue.
wavy part, yeah.
What is it, what is it that you're planning to do?
What we've looked at, obviously, you drive Brunswick Avenue, there's, the pavement is, wavy at best and spalling at worst, and, there was utility work that was done. Are we getting 10 years out now, I think, from when the sewer system was put in on that side of the road? So, we're taking the approach that, the settlement that has occurred over 10 years is hopefully maxed out. So then you would go from, the basis level that the asphalt is today, and on the right side of the road as you're driving, west, wedging asphalt from the center of the road out. So you essentially fill in all of the waves, but then you need to go back in and do an overlay over the whole road that would, match both sides up and, would be, a completed driving surface.
Has there been technologies between now, 10 years ago that present themselves? Are there options as far as what technologies to use? You
Well,
know,
there-
adherence to you're not gonna tear up the existing road.
No,
So
and
you're talking about laying on top, filling in those gaps.
yeah, and, you know, and this approach is, you know, is I think a reasonable way to approach this. You know, I mean, they've done that on, you know, years ago, they did some of the causeway, you know, that, you know, the settlement had occurred, well, you can't dig it up and fix it all underneath, where you could, but I'm sure you don't want to spend, you know, $1 million.
So it's
to do
been
that.
done before, and then time has proven that it's lasting.
Yes. Yeah. Now you could, so I think that, you know, you talk about different technologies, well, you know, there's different kind of geofabrics and things you could add in there that I don't think would really address the settlement issue. You know, the settlement's all below even the subgrade of stone, you know, so you'd be trying to do a surface fix or something that's lower.
But you said settle 10 years. I think one of the concerns is adherence, you know, asphalt to asphalt, right? Because I know they did, I tried 211 all the time, you know, and about 4 miles out, there's one, you know, going over, and they did a section, it was the exact same thing. It was like this, they laid some, and I've been watching it for about a year now, and it's still good. So, okay.
Yeah, so the, you know, the question I think that is up for discussion for, you know, the board is, you know, do you look at, you know, allocating a portion of, you know, the overall budget and break up, you know, this method over a couple of years, or do you try and address it all at one time? I know that y'all currently operate at around, you know, $100,000 a year for paving projects, you know, so do you kind of break this up over a couple of years, or, you know, try and, you know, address it all at one time?
And make it a priority within our streets paving process. Because what happens inevitably when we get to the budget cycle, you know, we've got our streets paving priority, you know, that these roads are up next, these are the worst ones that were done. And inevitably we get, well, how about Brunswick Avenue? We haven't ever, you know, heretofore, the quote's been, well, I'm afraid of Brunswick Avenue because what we're getting into is having to disturb that roadbed, which is disturbing the sewer system, the sewer line. So we've avoided it. But now, especially with a couple of our most recent paving endeavors where we've actually used this technique to some limited degree, the wedging, and that's what it's called, and it seems to have worked well.
Yeah, we did some of Jordan Avenue right there under the bridge. We've had to wedge some areas, and, you know, it's I mean, that's what it is. It's, you know, it's an undefined, you know, section of asphalt. You know, it's not just 1.5 inches all the way down. It's, you know, a wedge part, but it's a little difficult, more difficult to apply.
Are we confident that all the settling has taken place so that you don't invest in leveling it off today and then it starts to sink some more tomorrow?
I think 10 years is a pretty good measure, you know, but I mean, it's hard to go and say, you know, definitely is it not going to ever settle anymore? It's hard. You know, it's like saying that the inlet isn't going to move again. You know, that's.
I guess I'll ask it in another way. We've been doing measurements periodically to see if there's been any change in the structure of the street over the last year or two.
No.
Is there any guarantee associated with the process?
Well, I think from a pavement repair process, I think you're going to get a level of service that's going to be acceptable. You know, I don't know where you would want to lay guarantee, you know, that it's never going to move again.
Well, I just don't want to get down the road 6 months, we spend $250,000, and it's 6 months down the road, we're no better off than we were before.
Sure.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to run the whole cost by you and see if there was any interest in doing perhaps a test section of it, a segment of it, knowing that, you know, if you do several test segments, the cumulative cost is certainly going to be, you know, greater than $250,000, because you're going to have multiple mobilizations. that's what we wanted to feel the board out for, is just to have the discussion around how you guys proceed.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, I'd be interested in seeing what would, if this is taking the place of what would be next on the 10-year plan. I think we, kind of hit the hot road spots, or hot spots, whatever you want to call it, for that plan.
Roller coaster.
But, I live on the roller coaster, so I'd be interested in doing this, obviously.
Does this proposal take all the humps and the bumps out?
This would be from Rothschild Street to High Point.
And could there be a half of them that are the worst ones that we could try as a test? That
I think
we
so.
had to mobilize twice to make sure it doesn't sink and doesn't deteriorate a year or two, and then
Yeah,
later on finish the lesser ones.
yeah.
I think that's a good approach.
Would we have
But it would increase the cost. Double the mobilization. It would increase the cost.
Well, you pay a little bit more in mow, fees, and you never know what asphalt prices would be and those types of issues, but,
255 would be 275,
yeah, maybe. Yeah, 10% maybe.
But that fits within a 10-year plan as well. I agree. I support that.
So maybe wait 2 years, watch it, measure it,
Wait a year.
what happens if we finish it
We
off.
got to run a yearly cycle.
To do that.
Wait a year and decide to go forward or wait another year.
All right?
We're actually going to decide this during the budget process, right? I mean, we're just looking at options now, discussing the possibilities.
What we would propose is to bring you back with a profile definite that we could entertain during the budget process.
When we would do it normally during that 10-year
That's right.
replacement process. Okay, good.
So what I'm hearing is about half of it, pick the worst half, and then basically split it up into and pick the worst half.
Whatever that 1 year, what is it, 110,000, whatever?
It's a penny on the tax.
Oh, 130? Okay,
Close to half.
right.
Do the half.
Yep, okay.
Okay, we can do that. I got what I need from you.
On to the next.
Water tank.
On to the next item. In your council packages there, I believe, you should have our preliminary engineering report for the second water tower. We were requested to study the need and potential cost of a second water tower on the island of Holden Beach. Mainly the west end, obviously you have a tower closer to the center, east end. We did some investigations, we coordinated, talked with the fire chief. The former Brunswick County Utility Director, Jerry Peters, helped us with some data collection with his knowledge of the Brunswick County system, and Jerry was instrumental in helping pull together some of our background info and some requirements and knowing how they operate. In talking with the chief and pulling together some requirements, the item that sticks out, I think the most is in the critical needs section, or just above that is basically a water tower. Half of the water average daily use that the town uses, and this is based on a yearly average. So if you take a yearly average, your storage requirement is half of that annual daily average. So on the average basis, the town is at an average of 417,000 gallons a day. So if you keep half of that, you would need 200,007 gallons per day that you would be absolutely required to have in storage. But that's on that's an annual average. We all know that in the summertime, you know, you're running at 800,000 gallons a day, and you're not touching half of that number. So, the second item, you know, that in the water quality or the water storage capacity amount is you know, would like to have that other half of the tank available for fire flow. So, you know, in the summertime, if you're using 800,000 gallons a day, half of that's 400,000, you're not meeting your half, and you have no fire flow storage. Now, you do have fire flow capacity that's coming from off the island. You know, Brunswick County, you know, they're supplying you water all the time. It's not just all up in the tower and coming out, you know, so. There's some numbers that you meet, but, you know, on an average yearly scale, but, you know, the summer scale, you know, you're not meeting those numbers. And then the other number based, talking about fire flow, if you look at this state fire marshal's recommendations, and this is where we coordinate a lot with Chief Todd over at Tri-Beach. They have a whole system. They have, you know, a GIS system that they have all their hydrants and all these fire flows. You know, just about every building on the beach has a number on it. Down on the west end, there are a couple, you know, and it's usually generated by some large houses, some multifamily, you know, condos or duplexes or things like that. But, you know, you're looking at needing a state fire marshal recommendation of 2,250 gallons per minute available for that facility. However, you know, the fire hydrant that's tested closest to that only generates, I think 1,000 gallons per minute available, or no, there's 1,300 available. So we're at a deficit of about 1,200 gallons per minute of fire flow at that particular hydrant. Now there's some nuances, I think, to how the state fire marshal rates the actual fire station. I'm not an expert in that. You know, the chief could come in and we could talk about this some more, you know, in a session or something. But I think that if you're not meeting capacity at some fire hydrants, it reduces your overall score. So there's some scoring and things that go into effect there that, you know, I think, you know, they might could offer a little bit more detail into that. But, you know, the short story is if you go on down into the future, when you're looking at, you know, water storage, you know, you project out 20 years, and you expect that the island's going to grow, and then in 2036, you know, you'd be looking at possibly 550,000 gallons average daily amount. And so if you look at storing half of that in your required storage, you know, you're barely at that amount, and then you're certainly not, you know, getting enough storage for the fire flow either. So when you project out 20 years, you know, there's some, you result in having or needing 546,000 gallons of storage required is our projection. So based on those numbers, you know, it looks like, you know, another 300,000 gallon tank would meet your needs. We looked at 3 different sites that, you know, this tank could be located at. Ocean Boulevard is a property already. There's several properties, I think, on Ocean Boulevard that the town owns. The town also owns the large tract that encompasses the Heron Landing disposal island, but there's a piece of that that's out of the Corps of Engineers easement. So there's possible use that a tank could go there at Heron Landing. And you also have Seagull Drive, that's where your second feed from Brunswick County comes under the waterway, Seagull Drive. So somewhere right in Seagull Drive would be a good place. It's right on the feed that's coming from Brunswick County. I don't believe the town owns any property there around Seagull Drive, so you probably, if you looked at that option, you know, there would need to be, you know, some property purchase to happen there. So on those 3 alternatives, the least cost alternative is the Ocean Boulevard tank at $1,754,000, and then the others go up. Heron Landing was $1.9 million, and Seagull's just over $2 million in total project costs.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I've never asked it before.
Sure.
The water in the tank, is that in constant motion? Is that being replaced all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Is it in natural flows of
Yeah, it fluctuates with the water pressure in the system, and Brunswick County, they've got a whole system where they can regulate the pump flow and how much they're pumping, and so, there's turnover amounts in the tank that have to occur to get water
Does
quality.
that tank affect the pressure at the hydrant?
Yes.
So if it's half full, you've got less pressure than if it's full?
Yes.
So in the east end now, we must have a much better pressure than the west end.
Yeah.
So you don't have a tank out there.
Yeah.
But do we always use?
Yeah.
Right now, it's hardly any people on the island, aren't we just, it's the flow from we're not using the tank, basically.
Well,
I don't know.
yes and no. And, Chris, he manages that tank, so I know he knows a lot
Right,
more.
Chris, or not?
That water tower racks have a SCADA system put on it, and they know when the tower, when the water level drops down in that, that's what triggers the pumps on the pump from the cube.
Oh, so we're always using the
So you always got, you can actually cut that off and just operate on the line pressure, but the SCADA system puts it through that tower and constantly plunges, but you can't just let it sit there until it's just static. If it just sits there.
Yeah, there's some requirements about how often it has to turn over. And, when you get down to, especially in the winter, y'all know, when there's less people here, there's not a lot of water being used, so, they got to manage it different than during the summertime.
My other question would be, as the town manager, how would we pay for this $2 million charge? We don't have that money in the fund, right?
You can just cut a check for that, can't you, John?
He said there must be another down, right?
So normally the state revolving water fund would be a source that municipalities go to for a loan basis. Usually they loan at like half of the normal market rate, so they give out pretty good rates for loan. It's like a 20-year basis payback for a state revolving loan. USDA funds some things too. They're normally like a 40-year loan period. Rates are maybe not as good as the state rate, but it's over a 40-year period, so your debt service is a little less.
There's a number of financing options available to you.
But I had the exact same reaction when I saw this was good start, but Lane Jordan, the same deja vu all over again. This is exactly like the engineering is a good start, but you talk fire flow, financial, land use, environmental. There's a lot of other things that have to be considered before we make, especially a $2 million decision. And I've learned from the land, the sewer and water, that we need to look at the whole thing, not just base the decision based on, no offense, an engineering report. So I think we should, P&Z, I think, would be a good place to send this and get the other information and the total decision points to go forward.
I do have a question. What's the impact on insurance if we are significantly below the recommended flow rate for fighting fires? I'm going to remind you all, because I live at West End, and I know how much longer it takes to get to West End. So you have a longer time for people to get there if there's a fire, and then you have potentially only half of the recommended flow rate. And so I think that insurance issues, the added risk and everything is a key part of this, as well as what happens if we have another situation with broken pipes in the county system. And if the best we do to conserve water, if it happens in the summertime, will we go dry just at a time of year that we need all the water we can get? I mean, I agree with you. I think all of this has to be thought through. And remember, we've got a couple months before we start budget discussions, and this is a capital expenditure, and it's a plan for when in the future. But I agree with you, Peter, get everything answered up front, but seeing that you get down, okay, so somewhere, let's assume there's a linear here. So at 878, we're still okay, and we have to go to 1365, and we keep going along the way, and it's not just the extreme west end that is below, okay? There's a lot of houses between 878 and 1365, so what proportion of the island is is what we would consider unsafely below that target. And again, these are the houses it takes longer to get to. So things have developed.
But I don't want to use the word unsafe, but we need to understand it, for sure.
Higher risk. Let's just say perhaps a higher
She's
risk
typing
than
over
we
there.
would, a higher risk than we would like. And that's what we have to
Right,
understand.
you got to get more information, for sure.
Well, the title of this report is preliminary
Yeah.
engineering report, and what we want to do is,
Good
this
stuff.
is a natural first step. You know, we semi-wildly guessed for a capital budget and put it in there. This is the next step to that. The third step would be,
Last winter when we painted the tank, was there water in the tank? No, it was empty.
Operate on that line.
And that was for a number of months, right?
Great.
Yeah.
And we fought a fire.
Well, that's my point.
And we did fight a fire.
Yeah, we fought a fire.
There are a lot of numbers in this thing. How do we go from having 575 people living on the island to having to do our calculations based on 3,000 customers? How do we get from the 575 to 3,000?
Well, there's 3,000, I guess, users, customers, meters, maybe as a total. So, you know, the state requirement, I believe, is based on your number of connections, not your population. So your population by census is, what, 575 or 600 or something, and, you know, but that's not the number of people that are here, you know, May to September. So, you know, so that's where the number of customers is what drives, I think, the requirement.
Average versus peak is unique for us.
Yeah, and
We're still not doing average. What the answer is just that we're doing by the number of homes and the number of meters, as opposed to having 10,000 people here on the Labor Day week.
well,
Am I right?
the storage requirement by the state is based on your actual measured amount of flow. So your yearly average is, you know, at, you know, what I say, 474,000 gallons is like your total year. If you average it divided by 365, that's how much you have to have in the tank, half full. So you got to have 207,000 gallons in the tank. So the 3,000 number really doesn't affect your storage amount that you got to have.
So I propose we send this to P and Z and get into the details, because I don't think there's, we're going to do it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. We can sit down and, you know,
I want to solve the problem tonight.
right, it needs more further, and there's a lot of ramifications, you know, that I think Chief Todd could probably offer up, and even to the insurance question, you know, I know that, you know, the fire station, however their ranking comes out, is trickled down to your insurance rates. I don't know what the projection is of that, but that's how it works.
So, do we have to make a motion, or I make a motion, we send this to P and Z for further analysis?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Unanimous, Madam Clerk, sending it to P and Z.
You were going to send it to the P and Z without any
Further analysis.
direction, that's it, just further analysis?
All right, number 11. Coastal engineering proposal for modeling and report. Assistant Town Manager. Ferguson.
Good evening. After the recent activities with the inlet, several of the commissioners have asked to see what a proposal would look like for some additional modeling and analysis services from our engineer, and I will let him discuss his proposal. If you guys have questions, those are the pages in your packet that follow the memo.
Commissioners. This is a proposal, as you know, and I was at that meeting several months ago with the Army Corps of Engineers, and this is about the East End Nourishment Project, which has kind of been, the lifeblood of the East End for, decades now. Back in about 10 years ago, the town proactively started piggybacking the Corps project and maximizing the amount of material that was getting onto the beach. And since then, the East End has done really well, a lot better. Just another 50,000 cubic yards every kind of project. It helped out quite a bit. Now, all of a sudden, there's competition for that sand source, as you know, and the East End is still kind of a vulnerable area, and it really can't, it needs a nourishment every 2 years. And in order for the town to kind of, to have a technical and scientific background on why really the East End is the best spot for it, we prepared that proposal. The first part is just to update the numerical modeling, and the numerical modeling is very complex. It's state of the art. We'd have to actually extend the grid a little bit to the east. We'd run a lot of the modeling we built upon from the previous effort for the environmental impact statement for the terminal groin. And so it's a good model, and it's very accurate, it's state of the art. But it's kind of intensive. It takes a long time to run these models. The task 2 is more just kind of how the Corps goes about making their decisions, and we'll kind of go through the same process where least cost, the least cost option where the Corps really is required to do that. But in this case, if there are easements or other complicating factors, they can choose to put it elsewhere. And so that would basically go through that and try to have bolster basically the opinion that the East End is the preferred option, and that is where this material should go.
So you're working. You know there's a process that the Corps uses, and you're trying to work within that technical steps.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for task 2. Yes.
Right. Okay. And as you said, we've done this before in support of the environmental impact study. So we're updating.
Yes.
Updating.
Yes.
So the objective and the goal for this project is to clearly demonstrate that the best place to put the sand is, I think I would say, on the east end of Holden
Yes.
Beach, rather than on Oak Island.
Yes.
It's the engineering data that supports that objective. That's what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Does this also take into consideration, and I hope I heard correctly, that they want to dig the channel deeper?
And why?
Or was I supposed to ask that?
No, that's fine. No, and unfortunately, there's several different items in Lockwood Folly. There's basically the Lockwood Folly Inlet crossing the AWW, and that's what we're talking about with this particular project. And that's the kind of the bird in the hand versus the two in the bush. That's the real project that the town of Holden Beach, in our opinion, really needs to hold on to. They've also actually, the county has come out and said, well, wait, we'll find some sand somewhere else. We'll go out and dredge a big channel out, through the Outer Ebb Shoal out in the ocean and put materials similar to maybe what Chalote does. But that's a much more, that's a completely different new project. And that will definitely affect the east end of Holden Beach because that conveyor belt of sand going from Oak Island over to Holden Beach would be completely interrupted, and that is a completely separate project, not involved with this. And I really haven't heard about that. The county is still working through that, and we're still going to get that data.
So this data would not support that you know, plus or
Not,
minus?
not this effort. This effort is specific to the Lockwood Poly Inlet Crossing.
Okay.
The longer, wider, deeper channel, in my opinion, would require a further evolution of a permit. During that permitting process, I think that the town's position should be that we need to have some modeling done in terms of environmental assessment, but we shouldn't have to be the ones that pay for that. That should be the permittee that does that work.
So,
And that
so
is-
is there something in place that will allow that to happen so that we don't get blindsided again?
I think our resolution sort of ends with that we are saying that before they do anything like this, there needs to be either monitoring or modeling data that shows that there won't be a negative impact.
As the adjacent beach, part of the CAMA permitting process requires that we be notified.
And it appears the county is more focused on navigation of the inlet versus.
Which we are, yeah.
Yes, exactly, but the where the sand goes is kind of a different project. And then as well as it's you know, with the state dredging funding, where the state is, you know, picks up 66, 67% of the funds, it seems like a lot of the county and a lot of the other municipalities, everyone's really trying to find a project where you can dredge so you can qualify for that 67% kind of reduction in funding, because the state will pick that up. But at the same time, it appears that maybe some communities are maybe trying too hard to try to find how to work that 67% discount, and then maybe are doing some projects that could be risky.
Just to get back to this proposal, when people who suggested we do this, one of the components was to also show that if you put the sand or the fill material onto Oak Island, then the natural drift would make it fill into the valley quicker
Yes.
than it would if you put it onto the east side of Holden Beach. Is that part of this study?
Yes, it is. It is.
It's in task to the longevity
Yes.
of our eastern and the Oak Island western.
Yes.
There's also the expense too, it's less expensive to put it on Golden Beach.
Yep. Yes.
And you started to talk about, you know, we lost a small project, but there's still projects that are near term that we could use this data to support us getting that percent.
Yes.
Michelle, Jack,
Yep.
from the Army Program Units. There's
In terms of
future.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers kind of has their minimum project, and then you're talking about maybe piggybacking that or
Yeah, I thought-
this winter?
Yeah, I thought there's a larger project that's forthcoming, that the decision hasn't been made. No?
Are you talking about the inlet crossing project?
Inlet crossing.
Yes, but that's supposed to be in next fiscal year. The one's 80,000 cubic yards,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here, and then there's a follow-on.
Okay, so this is the
project.
80,000, this supports
That-
the 80,000.
But it would, but the modeling here is more, more broad and, with the intent that the logic be perpetual, in terms of what it tells us, that the sand needs to be.
Okay, especially the second part, right? Okay.
Timing for report?
Yeah, you know, we probably, you know, about 2 months. It's a lot of work.
I guess the only other question, with all the surveying, this is different now.
Mhm.
It's what you
Okay.
have to do.
Okay,
The Central Reach Project,
sure.
okay? far as any loss of sand in the surveying that was done?
I've got a
Storm
report
was-
for it. I got a report for it.
Then I'll listen. Okay.
And then budget, this is not budgeted.
This is not budgeted. If y'all want to go forward with this, you should approve the proposal and also the associated budget amendment that appropriates fund balance, $47,000.
That's 54, right?
That's correct.
I think it's necessary and it's timely.
Are you ready for a motion, right? Okay. I'll make a motion that we
Second.
approve this
Both
and,
and the budget.
and along with the $47,000.
Well, 1814.
Yeah. And then ordinance 1814.
Would you restate the motion? Because it's hard.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this analysis, and along with that, the ordinance number 18-14.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion?
It's new discussion.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Ms. Turner. Number 12.
At the Hurricane Florence FEMA Public Assistance applicant briefing, the town was advised that a resolution would need to be passed to appoint an applicant designee for the town. This is not a new process. The town had to do this with Matthew as well. The document came digitally after the agenda packet went out, so Heather sent that out so you guys can see what that looks like. It's a standard form from the state. The suggested motion, so that we can get our paperwork in order and be prepared when they're here for us to sign documents, is the BOC hereby designates town manager David Hewitt as the primary applicant designee and assistant town manager Ferguson and fiscal operations clerk Lochner as secondary contacts on the FEMA resolution.
Need a motion?
I make the motion, we accept this word for this suggested motion.
Second?
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Number 13, Commissioner Freer.
Yeah, just wanted to ask the town manager for, 13, I'm sorry, that's the other one I'm looking at. Yeah, so we got a report from the inlet and beach protection report. It's on page 56. There's no issues, and I just want to thank them for their hard work, and that's it. It's in our ordinance that we get a report from this week. So, thank you.
Police report.
This is not Chief Lane's.
Good evening. I see a lot of faces I know and some that I don't. For those that I don't, my name is Jeremy Dixon. And before I get into the police report, I just want to do something on a personal note. Some of you may know that I recently graduated from the FBI's National Academy. For those that don't, I did. And I want to take a second to thank the chief, the town manager, David, all the commissioners, and everyone sitting in this room. It took a lot of sacrifice for not just our agency, but for the entire town to send us, to the National Academy. So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for that. As far as the police report goes, I was gone for 3 months, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We had a really good summer from the reports that I've read and what I've seen since I've gotten back. We've had a few break-ins, but the numbers look like they were down from what we've had in the past. So everything looks really good. I will remind you that as we're going into the winter season, more homes are sitting vacant, so keep an eye on your neighbors' houses. If you see anything suspicious, do not hesitate to call us. Let us know so we can go check it out. Cars, people, anything that looks out of the way. and call us then. We had some reports where they say we see something last week. It's a little late for us to look into it a week later, so if you see something, let us know immediately. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll give him a big hand. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you like to read the executive session?
Executive session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3 to consult with the town attorney.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're going into executive session. I don't anticipate it to take over a couple of days. All in favor, say aye. Unanimous, Madam Clerk. Back in regular session. And 21. Activities and timeline. Reconduct the determination and so forth. That's you then.
Yes.
All right, you got the floor, ma'am.
This is going to be very short. The current fees that have been adopted will remain in effect for 90 days, after which we will reevaluate the status.
That's a motion. Second. Second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. And then we'll go to number 15, is that right?
Yes.
Public Works, Ms. Clevens.
No discussion.
Good evening, I'm gonna give you an update on our sewer, vacuum sewer pump station number 4 construction. Since the last time we met, when we met that time, we actually had the upper concrete floor poured. Since then, the upper level part, the wood part of the structure is probably about 35% complete. It's actually almost completely dried in. There's like some metal on the roof. The east wall is not complete, has not been completed because we're scheduled for delivery of equipment tomorrow. And when that happens, we'll actually be sliding equipment in, so it should be equipment inside the building before the end of the week. According to the engineers, say we're probably about 35% complete on the building itself, and probably 40, 45 on electrical, the conduits and things like that. And I hate to put this out here, but I'm going to anyway. According to him and the contractor, there's possibility that we may possibly start the equipment up by Christmas, which would be a good thing. And with that being said, that's not saying we're going to be complete with the project. There's still a lot of stuff that would actually have to take place, but at least we would have the major switch over done in the off season when the flow is down, and that's what we really need to happen. So far, the project hadn't had any change orders or any cost overruns other than what we had originally projected, and hopefully we can stay on track with that. We're scheduled to have a meeting October 30th, I think at 1:30, I think is the time. We'll meet with the contractor and we'll discuss the whole project, and maybe by the next meeting I can have a revised time schedule with some timelines laid down on it. What I'm seeing in the according to engineer, I feel like we've made pretty good progress. I don't really think we can be that far behind, but in all reality, we lost probably about a week and a half here in Hurricane Florence. Since they come back, they have appeared to make a pretty good bit of headway. It's actually starting to look like something now anyway.
It's a cute little house.
Yeah, I think so. Let's get in there. It's a lot.
So, my question was, are we on schedule on budget, but you're saying
Budget-wise, we're on schedule. There's nothing to change.
we're on budget, how about the schedule?
As far as the schedule and timeline, I don't have anything edged in stone, but I feel like that's a pretty good indication. If he says that he thinks we're gonna have it fired up by, December, that's pretty good. But as far as having it on writing, maybe after we have our meeting next Tuesday, maybe we can get some kind of idea. And I guess there's still a lot of things to get to affect that, like I say equipment's supposed to be here tomorrow, I believe that when I see the truck back in, you know, I've heard, I've heard the wind blow before, and I really don't take it for granted until I see that happen, but, I feel like they made some pretty good progress with what we had, for what time we've had so far. Like I said, we lost probably a week and a half, during the storm.
You can make up a week and a half possibly to do it.
Well, possibly, but my thing is, I know everybody wants to keep the schedule. If it's right, and we don't have any problems, nobody loses service, when it's all said and done, and we don't have a truckload change order to jack the price up, that's a win-win for me, but that's just the way I see it.
Okay.
Anybody's got any questions or anything I can answer for them, I'd be happy to do it.
It's not specifically on this one, but I just wanted to ask, when do we start the whole process for the next one?
Well, and engineering, was budgeted, in this year's budget, this past year's budget, there's still a lot of footwork that has to be done for that, and also, I'm sort of working up under the town manager, you know, I don't know what financing is gonna be for jumping right into another one. It'd be nice if we could, just hit them bam, 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 and be done with it, but I really don't know how that's gonna play out.
I thought the discussions had ended up with, we wanted to get the first one done first so that we could work in the lessons learned, if any, into the next evaluation. Even though we budgeted funds to do the engineering work for the subsequent stations, I forget right off the top of my head, when the schedule, it was like February was when I believe that the first one was supposed to be done, and then I assumed that we'll just move right on into the second one as far as the engineering services for that one.
Okay.
I'll double check that, but yeah.
That sounds right, because I know we had the engineering budget told us.
Thank you, Mr. Clemmons.
All right.
Number 16, Mr. Freer, Mr. Butler. Harding. All right, good.
Number one, I'm just gonna go over all the items that we said we were gonna put in place before the summer season. And what the purpose of this discussion is to determine exactly what's been done and the effectiveness of what's been done too as well. So, number one, we have a visitor map. Yay, that's complete. Number two, parking direction signage at the bottom of the bridge. Francis wasn't too friendly to us. He was either that or Michael took out the right sign coming down the bridge, or it's twisted around, and that needs to be fixed. And but in a sense, for the summer season, parking to the left, parking to the right, east or west. And I think that was a pretty good thing. At least I've got some positive feedback about it. Better utilization.
Go back, there's another part to that, include signage.
Oh, the signage, yeah. The signage at the various identified locations. I didn't see that happened.
The signage you're talking about at the various locations, Joe, you're talking about a sign actually pointing you right into the parking lot.
Every parking location, you normally will see parking or a P at the.
The 9 municipal parking locations, we said we put a P in there, so they since come down to the bottom of the bridge, they see a P, and we figured we'd put a P in at all the various.
Well, originally we had proposed doing 5 of those, but I do see the need to put those on all the public access ways, and I'd actually discussed that with David, and I'll follow through and get it, but I think I can get a different vendor than we got the first one from, it'll probably be a little more friendly price-wise, but.
Okay. Good. All right, so that's still open, right?
That's still open.
Okay. The signage also from the 2 a.m., 5 a.m. signs, I saw the one sign down at the end of Ferry Road, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., no parking, but I didn't see any other signs in any of the locations.
Check.
Okay, so that's.
Nothing's going on,
I think we only ordered at the time, 10, was it 2 or 3 signs?
3 signs.
3 signs.
Yeah, I did a report on the parking, the P parking signs, where I gave y'all a map that had 5 locations for those. 2 were at the bottom, and then the other ones were where the future was supposed to go. Those signs were the ones that we had to get permission from the DOT for. Remember that was that presentation with that map. And then we got the 2 to 5 signs, when we were talking about that, but I only purchased 3 of them. That was all I purchased.
Okay, so we're gonna purchase those? The balance?
Chris, did you say you could find those cheaper than what we?
The P, the ones up there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that, no problem, that's a piece of cake.
Okay. Then number 3, we purchased the bumpers. We have bumpers in a number of locations. The one thing we didn't do, and I guess maybe you felt as if it didn't need to be done, the paint striping on the wood.
Well, the only place that I actually put the curb stop, or actually 2 places I put the curb stops after the summer, was actually up under the bridge or along that fence, or 2 fences down there, which is a gravel parking lot, you know. I didn't paint anything on the fence, and also, Ferry Road actually had the angled, curb stops. But, I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but when I seen, even after I put the ones under the bridge, I could go up there and you'd see a car parked up under sideways taking up 2 lots, but, so I don't really know how effective I could say that was.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it, like you just said, and I've seen it where people go and they park head on to the parking stop.
Yeah.
So it's just something I don't think we can control, but it's
Yeah.
there for people. What we're trying to do is better utilize the parking we currently have. Number 4, that's been taken care of, that's resolved. Number 5, develop a communications plan pertaining to parking revisions. What did we, David, can you comment on that as far as what we did?
Oh,
Did we put anything on the website?
yeah, the map is on the website and the app information, and we put it out in a blast when we did it a couple of times.
A blast? Okay.
Yeah, we did put it out there. I put it on Facebook when we first did it, so we put it out there. And then next summer, because the map actually was developed towards the end of the summer. Next summer, we'll make sure that we get it out there again too.
And the electronic sign.
Right, it was on the sign too.
Okay. Number 6, I think we've discussed police enforcement throughout the last couple of months. So we're okay there. A, on the 1807, the ordinance being amended, that's in place. We took care of that. And 1808 as well. So those are taken care of. The next area that we were going to look at was to follow up, as we're doing now, identifying with the phase work, in this phase, what's left. And we know we have to put some additional signage out. That's left to be done. So then identify the next phase of the parking project, and this is what we identified. With the support of a third party to investigate the possibility of increasing parking on Jordan Boulevard and areas surrounding the pavilion. And then the next sentence says, this should also include investigating organizational options for boat and vehicle parking, which is currently having an impact on single-car visitor parking. Hopefully we won't get another letter on people getting a ticket. I really don't know too much of what we can do there on that issue, you know? But after the summer season, which we're doing now, reviewing the effectiveness of the changes, going forward, we said that we would investigate other potential vacant land/properties that can support additional visitor parking on the island, if determined to be necessary. The next one, conversion of town-owned properties into additional visitor parking if needed. And then we also said possible options or recommendations going forward. And I think looking at the funding, the potential, or the lack of funding that we're receiving, and being creative in the future as far as generating additional revenues, I think we need to keep our mind open to additional means of revenue. And I know that we may have discussed before parking meters, and I think the Citizens Committee kind of threw that one out the window, but I think we should keep that on the table. Maybe it's not parking meters as much as it's kiosks. A lot of the surrounding communities have gone to a kiosk method for parking. it generates revenue. What I suggest we do with the items the vacant land and determining whether or not we do need to do anything else or go forward or any of the recommendations, I'd like to pass this, recommend that we pass this to P&Z, let P&Z assess and evaluate it, and get back to us on any additional recommendations and options that they have. Yeah, sounds good? Can I make that, do I need to make that as a motion?
Just, do we want to send it to P&Z, or do we want to send it back to the parking subcommittee from P&Z?
Well, the reason why I said P&Z is only because that committee reported to P&Z. So then P&Z then send it there. Hopefully.
Do we want to reinstitute the parking committee to report to P&Z?
Well, I was hoping that let P&Z make that decision.
I think from memory, when you assigned them the duty, you gave them a certain amount of time to do so. So you would probably just, if you make a motion, maybe just say that you want to reinstate the parking committee if that's what you were planning on doing. Because P&Z can't do it without the board saying that it's okay.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion that we reinstate the parking commission through the P&Z to address these future issues or topics.
Is there a second? Second. Any more discussion?
I'd like to add something. I know, and this isn't related to the latter part of your discussion, Joe, but relevant to the curb stops. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that those curb stops, we've got 2 festivals a year. Chris has got to take those up. I mean, we got to take them up. That's what he's getting ready to do for the festival, because that's where where everybody puts their stuff, and they're tripping over those, the ones under the bridge. So they're problematic. Well, he's taking them up.
Yeah.
And our committee is not a committee anymore. I mean, we don't have the same members that we originally had. We'll have to form new members.
Yeah. Have to see if the old guys. Well, I was on that committee myself, so I don't anticipate going back on this.
That's what I meant. And I don't know, I mean, they may not want to, those same committee members may not want to serve.
P&Z will handle it, I'm sure. I'll contact P&Z and talk to them. Okay?
Well, we have a motion. Would you read the motion back now, clerk?
Yes, I'm sorry, my computer just died, but it's coming back up. Maybe. The bar stand is coming back up. The motion was to reinstate the committee and to send the future options back to the P&Z. That's the pretty close
Well, that's
wording.
different than what you're saying now, isn't it?
Well, no,
No?
Well,
I'm okay with that.
in the reinstating of the committee, I think if those members aren't able to serve, I think your ordinance that you established in the code book, I think you would still be able to appoint different people.
Right.
I don't think it would be a problem, personally.
Okay.
Reinstate the parking commission through P&Z to address the future topics. Sorry, it did come back up. That was the motion.
Madam Clerk, Madam Attorney, would you make me feel better and tell me that's okay?
Well, I'm just sitting
Because
here
we have
flipping
no
through the
committee
code, Mayor.
standing.
It's in 155.
Yeah. The parking.
Yeah, we just read it today.
Well,
It's under the planning board. 155.15.
I'm at 13. I don't have that one. Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. So we'll modify,
I think Joe wants to modify.
Modify the
Will you withdraw that motion and
I'll
make
withdraw
another
it.
one?
I'll withdraw that motion.
And you agree with that? All right, yeah.
Want to give P&Z the permission to establish another authorize another citizen advisory committee pertaining to parking to address the future 2019 concerns or topics.
That's a motion.
Second?
Okay. Madam Attorney, make me feel good on that one, too.
You're not upset, the planning and zoning is not establishing it, the board has established it for the planning and zoning board to fill the members. Is that your understanding?
Correct. Correct.
I think it's fine.
Right.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Anything else on that? We're on number 17. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes, sir, this is the amendment to the solid waste and recycling contract. Basically, this takes the recycling to a weekly pickup in the summer season, remaining every other week during the months of October through May, at a total projected cost. It increases the subscription fee up to $61.56. There's an associated budget amendment based on the estimated impact that would be required of $9,883 and a corresponding revision to the fee schedule, increasing the annual fee that we collect to $67.56 per bin. This is in accordance with the board's desire to increase the recycling to weekly pickups in the summertime.
When do those new bills go out?
1 January.
The only comment I have that the document is carts must be placed to the curb no later than 6 a.m. on a scheduled day of service. And I just, in looking further down the road, we're going to have some more discussions on the trash containers. When we talk about solid waste, and we're talking about returning them to the storage location by 6 p.m. the day after the collection. I don't know whether we want to wait to address it when we get there, or we want to make a change here.
This is the amendment to the existing contract with Waste Industries. What is proposed further back is an amendment to the ordinance for solid waste recycling.
I move that we accept both the amendment to the solid waste and recyclable collection contract as well as the ordinance 1815, amending ordinance 1810.
And resolution 1812.
Oh, sorry.
A, B, C.
And, yes, and resolution 1812, A, B, and C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Number 18.
Okay. Right. It seems like a way long time ago that we discussed that we needed to update our solid waste ordinance, and I volunteered to take a first stab at creating a document that then Heather and Public Works would get together and we would go through it and try to make it into a more final document. Well, with everything that's happened, there hasn't been time for this. So what you've got in front of you is, basically what I put together And when I put something together, I usually go as rigid as possible at the beginning because I always feel it's easier to soften things than to remember you have to firm things up. But this is not, I don't think, really seen town eyes yet. I was hoping to get some comments during public comment, but we didn't. So I guess what we can do is quickly go through, and any commissioners that have some comments or preferences. But again, I think we really need to get a sit down of Heather and Chris, and I'm offering myself to try to make sure that we feel comfortable with things before it goes to the town attorney. This is getting to be time is of the essence because we wanted to reflect ordinance changes in direction to the rental management companies as a communication to them so that they have the right information in their packets that go to renters. And we're, I think, right up on when those packets would start to get put together. Is that right, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
To facilitate that time frame, I would be happy to meet with y'all as a group so that we can not create one document from y'all that then I revise. So if I could participate in your group, we might be able to skip a step.
I think what it comes down to is when Heather and Chris, or whoever Chris appoints to do it, are available to spend the time to do this. I'm basically here every day except November 2nd.
I'm pretty good too. If you want, I could just, the three of you send an email tomorrow and we could figure it out together. What day is best for everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we can send stuff directly to you.
Yeah, because it's going on 10 o'clock, if you would just email to Heather and me any suggestions you have,
I got a couple of comments.
that's, I think, in the interest of time, that would be fine with me. Okay?
Good.
That was done.
That was done. So that's number 18,
That was it.
19.
Yeah, that's mine, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Fair.
Yeah, I'm just asking Town Manager Hewitt to give a quick update on the status of the internal control.
Certainly, the program manager from RSM has completed their field work. We've received a skeleton draft back from them, a matrices, if you will. Those have been provided to the audit committee chair. The staff has gone through that matrix and responded to the program manager with some administrative errors, pointing those type things, omissions, and some inadvertent disconnects out to them. They're far enough along that they've sent us a bill for $16,000. I haven't processed it yet, with the anticipation after discussion with Landon Dickus, program manager, that there'll be a final draft prepared within the next month, and a review of that draft conducted by the manager, the audit chair, and somebody else from the audit committee prior to coming to the commissioners with a presentation on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Number 20, Mr. Freer.
That's me. I failed to do this last time, so I forgot it, but here is the presentation, the Pelican Award presentation to the town of Holden Beach. And there's a article here that was presented along with this plaque that I'll leave up here and everybody can look at it. So that's the Pelican Award. If you forgot, this is for the efforts of not building the hard structure on the terminal ground. this up somewhere.
Do you want to take a picture or no? It's up to you. I can get it afterwards, whatever you guys want to do.
We've been in the paper anyway.
Okay.
So we're good. Thank you.
Number 22, Ms. Pat.
Yes. This topic was predicated by some things that came out actually last August. So again, it seems like a really long time ago, but we missed September, so I would have liked to have talked about it a little bit more timely, but everybody's been set back on schedule, so that's okay. I want to get this right, so I actually did type out what I want to say because there's things I'm quoting. So the General Assembly has outlined a plan for the state to acquire permanent dredging capacity for maintenance of the state's shallow draft navigation channels, allocating $15 million from the shallow draft navigation channel and dredging and aquatic weed fund to Dare County to provide a forgivable loan to a private partner for the purchase of a shallow draft hopper dredge under the direction of the Oregon Inlet Task Force, quotation, in accordance with the work plan negotiated under subdivision 2 of subsection E of this section for maintenance of shallow draft navigation channels located throughout the state. So the way I read this is under Dare County control, but it's supposed to be for maintenance of all of the channels throughout the state. And it's further specified the task force shall coordinate the use of the dredge to ensure that dredging projects for all shallow draft navigation channels located in waters of the state are completed in an expeditious and timely manner. Section 13.7b. And you all have this regulation in front of you. Now, the state appears to have taken an important step to ensure the state's shallow draft inlets are properly managed. That's great. However, I have concerns after reading the Coastal Review article that issued on August 10th, where it is stated the proposed hopper dredge would service Oregon Inlet, Hatteras Inlet, and their surrounding waterways, and when possible, other waterways and shallow draft inlets in North Carolina. Now, this doesn't, to me, jive with what the legislation says. And later in the article, it's stated, also, once this dredge starts in Oregon Inlet, that will open up and release the Corps of Engineers dredge assets to operate in other coastal waterways. So I'm perplexed. I'm comparing a newspaper article, basically, with what I think the intent, with reading what the legislative intent is, but I know that things get garbled, so I think it's really important that all the counties and municipalities that have relied on and contributed monies to the Corps of Engineers shallow draft navigation channel dredging programs have input into this task force planning process to ensure the necessary timing and frequency of dredging service for all inlets is understood and adequately accounted for in annual plans, whether by the state dredge or the Corps of Engineers dredge assets. So I think that we need to have a plan to get clarification. We need to understand, we're talking 2 years down the road here before this starts, as I read it. But I don't think it's too early for us to start asking some questions about how is this going to work, to come up with a plan of how do we approach the appropriate people to get what we think we need and want. Perhaps what we should be doing is writing a letter to the appropriate parties in Raleigh to ask for clarification. But I really think that the board should develop some, let's just say, asks and a plan of how we want to go about getting our needs on the table and getting heard. And that could be, the start could be a letter. It could be asking that the task force be expanded beyond just people who are on the current task force that's Dare County driven. Do we need resolution to be developed? There's a lot of steps. So I think we need to come up with a plan of how we want to get clarification on what's happening and how we get our needs in there formally and correctly.
Agreed. We have an inlet in each board that could help us develop that. So start that for us. We have a proposal from an environmental attorney that could help us with that. So we have some options as well.
Can we agree that having the town manager or assistant town manager approach whoever is appropriate, perhaps in Raleigh, to just ask for some clarification could be a good first step? Or do we want to wait a bit longer before we take action?
Why don't we just ask Frank Eiler at the beach and inlet, the BBC meeting tomorrow, how the Lockwood Folly Inlet, how we gonna get the dredge from Dare County to ever make it down here past Manio tomorrow in the morning?
There's also
I'm
the NC
perfect.
Byway.
Yeah.
The NC Byway Conference is being held in Hanover County, November 13th and 14th, and there will be a very broad spectrum of individuals involved with coastal management.
We have a Brunswick Shoreline Protection Consortium meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. I plan on going to. I think David, you.
Representative Eiler's on the agenda tomorrow, so
That would be a good first step.
just ask him.
Why right, just speak.
Just ask him.
So upon finding out more detail from him, we can discuss perhaps next month then whether or not we need to turn something over to the Inlet Beach Management Board. Okay? That's fine.
Mr. Hewitt, you're next, sir.
Got an award we'd like to present to Christy Ferguson.
Yes.
This is Christie's certification as a national certification as a Parks and Recreation Executive. Give you a little bit of background on the Parks and Rec Executive Certification Program that was founded in 2011, establishing a national standard for managerial, administrative, and executive parks and recreation professionals. The mastery level credential focuses on the practical knowledge and current real-world skills necessary in today's changing parks and recreation environment. Candidates have to meet both educational and experience requirements to be eligible to sit for an exam. Christie is one of 14 in North Carolina to have received the credential and one of 251 international. So she's part of an elite group of professionals in the parks and rec field. Without further ado, the presentation of the National Recreation and Park Association, let it be known that Christie W. Ferguson has met the requirements of the standards set forth by the National Certification Board and is hereby granted certification as a certified Parks and Rec executive, July 28, 2018. She actually has a number here too. 4, 5, and 7. Okay. That's only good for 4 years. I want to take care of some important things first. To announce that the Veterans Day luncheon is the 9th of November. It's free to all our vets and guests, but you have to sign up by the 2nd of November. Make sure that all you vets come on down and have lunch with us. Our beach and inlet board orientations have been completed. I think there's a couple of them that might have to go around for a second time around. Canal dredging, the outfit King Dredging is partially mobilized, and they've got all their land-based equipment here on site down at Scotch Bonnet, prepping the disposal site down there. The dog park is closed until further notice, could be as late as Memorial Day before it opens back up. We've got to dry that material out. So it's closed, and actually it will be being secured while we've got heavy equipment down there. The order of progression on the dredging that's going to start approximately 15 November, we're going to be going east to west, so Holden Beach Harbor, Heritage Harbor, and Harbor Acres. That's the order that will be going east to west. Probably 5 to 6 weeks for each one of those. 4 to 6 weeks, just depends if we have any issues there. I want to put a plug in. If you haven't made arrangements to move your dock or take care of your boat, now's the time to really get interested in doing something with it. If you don't want to have as good a project as good a product as possible, you don't have to worry about moving your dock. But we would suggest, in order to optimize the dredger's capability, that if you can, that you maneuver it out of the way. Our Division of Water Resources reimbursements process, it appears, is very responsive. We've got our second request has been submitted and approved, so that we haven't received the second reimbursement yet, but that appears to be working well so far. The board already received an update today on the 50-year project, but for those of you that weren't here earlier, just to give you feedback, pass on feedback from the colonel, the district commander over in Wilmington. That 50-year project has been inactive since 2013. It's going to take about another $550,000 to finish the general revaluation report. There's been $8 million spent so far of federal money through the fiscal year 2012, and there will be no federal money available until a cost-sharing agreement that outlines how that $8 million will be recouped, and also to upfront the $550,000. So if there is interest in proceeding, the ball is in our court, and so that would be something that the commissioners could talk about, or even send over to the Inland and Beach Board. The Point West stormwater drainage that we've been working on, seems like for about 6 months, it works. The Florence hurricane, all the water ran out, so we're pleased with the way that turned out. Our annual audit for year ending 30 June has delayed the preliminaries. We've submitted all that preliminary stuff, but the field work by the external auditor is not going to happen until mid-November, and everybody, it seems, in eastern North Carolina has been impacted, and those positions have been coordinated with the local government commission. Looks like we're now working 3 FEMA hurricane damage reimbursement programs simultaneously. Matthew, we're trying to get that one buttoned up and still have $350,000 worth of reimbursements pending. Where hopefully that'll come on through, and let's move on to the next one. Joe, I told you that I had numbers for Florence and also Michael. Ignore, those numbers are being updated as we speak. Ignore the ones that I have in the report. For Florence, the inlet-to-inlet calculation of erosion is 275,000 cubic yards. Of that 275,000 cubic yards, 201,000 cubic yards lie within the Central Reach project. And that price tag is approximately $8 million is where we're at. The mobilization is just so expensive there. Other town facilities, during Florence, we had both our gen sets ran into issues at the emergency center and also new town hall. We've got them temporarily band-aided together, but we're going to have to look at how those generators, especially the one here at the new town hall, is set up, and probably looking at making a recommendation on some reconfigurations, whether we want to mobilize that or we got to do something different, even if it's wrong. On the sewer system itself, there were minimal damages to the lift stations. Would you agree with that, Chris? We had some minor electrical due to some power surges, but from what we were afraid was going to happen, we're a long way. We ended up a long way from there. I do want to speak specifically to stormwater because we were not prepared for the type of rain event that we had. If it hadn't been for the fire department helping out with their pumper trucks and the MacGyver brothers here to my left, Tim Evans and Chris Clemens, along with the public works crews, converting our sewer bypass pumps over to stormwater discharge pumps, we would not have been able to pump the estimated 25 million gallons of stormwater off of our roads and vacuum sewer system, and we wouldn't have been able to re-energize those lines if we hadn't done that. But the fire department was a godsend in that they helped us out for about 72 hours. That's how long it took us to get rid of all that water. Our overtime budgets really took a beating during Florence. Those overtime expenses are reimbursables. But flow wasn't normal. We'll have to just work that. We'll have to manage our way through those issues. Didn't have any apparent damages to any of the canals, maybe some bulkheads. Those types of things, especially bulkheads, may not manifest themselves for a while. But the good news is that we didn't have any overwash into the canals. And that means that there's no extra material that we have to account for, meaning contract amendments with the dredger. So we're fairly certain that won't have an impact. Tim Evans tells me that there's about personal property damage is about $5 million, and that's singles and siding. When I say personal property, non-public assistance type, non-public facilities assistance type damages, strictly shingles and siding. Hurricane Michael, initially we thought that it looked like to me that we had more damage from Michael because of the onshore wind flow, but based on a preliminary assessment, on our recent surveys, looks like there's 136,000 cubic yards over and above the Florence inlet-to-inlet damages and about 90,000 cubic yards in the Central Reach area. So that fraction is 136 over 90. And those are damages, cubic yardage over and above the Florence damages. All this rainwater, I don't know if anybody has as many mosquitoes as they have had recently, but it looks like that, coupled with the county aerial bombardment and our daily truck-mounted efforts, that we've made some headway. Now that the cooler weather's here, perhaps we're out of the mosquito season, but we're gonna continue to keep monitoring the mosquitoes via the traps that we set out, just to make sure that hopefully we'll have a nice little cool snap here and we'll keep them beat down. I have received $57,000 sewer capacity reimbursement from the county, and that's basically an unbudgeted miscellaneous type revenue from Brunswick County in exchange for the capacity that we basically pass through rent to Southport. We're in year 3 of that reimbursement arrangement. The $57,000 is over those past the 2 previous years. They've given us 2 payments of $57,000, so we've received the first installment, I guess, of the reimbursement for the fiscal year. Just give everybody a heads up, there's the Holden Beach Bridge rehab project is getting ready to start. The contract schedule is soft at this time. They could begin by the 29th of October, but they haven't had their pre-construction meeting to finalize the schedule. We're going to be invited to that and let everybody know they'll be replacing some of the concrete patching underneath and on top. We'll have intermittent closures, work as much at night as possible, but we'll get a hard schedule just as soon as we know more. That's all I have.
David, these beach strand sand reimbursements that we're getting from, eventually we will get from FEMA, that's going directly into the B-Part Sand Fund?
Well, this is done on a reimbursement basis. So the damages that we would have is we would have to make a repair. We would have to do a project and front the money, and then you would be reimbursed an expense. You're not gonna get a reimbursement for a project that's already out there. You have to prepare it first, and then you're reimbursed for it.
Yeah, but how many years do we have to
I want to say that's a 2-year program. We actually stretched out the Irene one we got a couple of extensions on that.
So this could potentially be contributed towards Central Reach 2
if you wanted to expedite the schedule for that.
Well, otherwise it goes away, right? Because it took that sand away from Central Reach.
Right.
And that's the only sand we get reimbursed, Central Reach, because that's the engineered portion of the beach.
That's correct.
FEMA that is reimbursed, right? So we should obviously look into that. Yeah, thanks.
Any more questions, comments? Hearing none, mayor's comments. This weekend is the big festival weekend, and they're forecasting rain, so remember the festival and wind.
And wind.
Talk to the Lord a little bit, especially for the festival. Other than that, my report is just late. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you're up.
I'll speak quickly because I have a couple of things to talk about. First of all, I want to commend the mayor for the terrific job he did during Florence. Everybody, I'm assuming everybody sitting out there was sitting someplace else, had no way of knowing what was going on here except for the reports that the mayor posted for us. And he did it in a timely fashion, and it was helpful for everybody. And I don't know how many other towns I read where people were saying, damn, the last thing I heard from the town was to evacuate. And that clearly was my Secondly, I attended the Boo at the Beach on Friday, and I have to say that, again, I'm sorry, wait, let me back up. Besides the mayor, I think the people in the Public Works Department worked as hard as anybody that we know worked. We should be so happy that we were able to get back on this island in the time frame that we can, and the only reason that we were able to do that is because of the work of Chris and his crew. And Chris, he's not going to say it, but I'll say it, he's down 2 people. And, you know, Tim obviously helped out as much, but they deserve as much applause as the mayor did because they did a great job. The beach, again, the town did a great job. Parks and Recs, Rhonda was there, and Christy was there, David was there. They were there till 8 o'clock at night, and they volunteer their time to make the town look good. And I appreciate it, and we all should appreciate it, because it does make the town look good. And last but not least, we have a land use plan for Holden Beach. It's being developed. You have gotten a request to fill out a survey from the town, from the Holden Beach Property Owners Association, and I think you've done it twice. Up to the current time, about 600 people have responded. It would behoove everybody here if you hadn't responded to do that. We want your input, and the more that you give us what you want, the advice, it makes it easier for us to move in that direction. So if you've done it, don't vote again. They'll come and lock you up if you vote more than once. But if you haven't done it, it would behoove you to fill that form out. And last but not least, thank you all for coming here and staying through this long meeting.
Thank you, and I'm sure it wasn't on purpose. The police department, some of those guys work straight through for over a day straight ahead without even sleep and rest. So the police department does a lot of wonderful things that nobody knows about, and I want to give you guys a hand. And I guess we ought to include town manager and assistant manager and all the staff.
All the staff.
And we found some real good cooks and good country girl cooking from our assistant town manager and some others. So everybody came on board, did a great job. So thank you all for everything you did. Let's see who else. You. Okay.
I just want to echo what Mike said. Thank you to everybody for everything you did for Florence. How rapidly after Michael, the guys were out on the beach looking at the erosion, which down at my end looked a whole lot worse than Florence. Mike forgot to say that the deadline for returning the surveys is October 31st. So, you know, don't let it go too long if you haven't already done it. And also, thank you so much for coming tonight and staying through this. We really do like your participation.
I'd like to thank everybody for your patience tonight and your attendance, and also the town staff involved in the storms. Congratulations. Great job. And Mr. Mayor, I'm really sitting in Pennsylvania, not knowing what the hell was going on. I really appreciate that communication. That was really good. And congratulations, Kristen. That's it. Thank you.
John?
I echo the same. I think everybody now knows just how hard the staff worked, and it really got appreciated. I don't think we've been back nearly as quickly if they hadn't done what they did. And working 72 hours, I've had 72-hour shifts before. That's 3 days and nights. That's a long time to be out there slaving it up, and not in nice weather, a nice windy, wet weather. So my thanks to everybody in town.
I too add my thanks to everybody.
Okay. We're almost done. We're public comments, number 27. Anyone want to speak about anything on your mind? Are we all in agreement it's time to go home? Is our motion we adjourn?
Ocean.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.